If you had asked anyone at my wedding whether something was wrong, they would have smiled and said no. They would have pointed to the chandelier-lit ballroom, the imported roses lining the aisle, the string quartet playing Vivaldi, the custom gown that took 8 months to make, and said, "This is perfect." And on the surface, it was. An $80,000 wedding, 300 guests, 2 families pretending to adore each other, cameras flashing, champagne flowing, but underneath the lace, the pearls, and the vows rehearsed 100 times in my head, something was already cracking, and it started with my sister. My name is Elena, and my sister, Marissa, has hated me for as long as I can remember. Not loudly, not openly, not in ways people could easily point out. She hated me in the quiet ways, the dangerous ways, the kind of hate that smiles while sharpening knives. Growing up, Marissa was the golden child, the loud one, the dramatic one, the one my parents called special. I was the quiet one, the observant one, the one who learned early that if I didn't make noise, I wouldn't get hurt. Marissa got attention by demanding it. I survived by staying invisible. When we were kids, if something went missing, it was somehow my fault. If Marissa failed a test, it was because I distracted her. If I succeeded, it was because I was trying to show off. By the time we were adults, the roles were cemented. Marissa needed to be seen as the best. I needed to not threaten her. And then I met Daniel. Daniel was calm, thoughtful, grounded, the kind of man who listened instead of performing, the kind of man who noticed things. When I introduced him to my family, my mother cried. My father shook his hand like he was signing a business deal. Marissa smiled. Too wide, too fast. She hugged him just a little too long. "Oh wow," she said brightly. "I didn't think you were the marrying type." That was the first warning. From the moment Daniel proposed, Marissa inserted herself into everything. The venue, the guest list, the dress, the menu. She framed it as help. "I just want your day to be perfect," she kept saying. But somehow, every suggestion centered her. She pushed for a toast, pushed for a spotlight, pushed for a bridal's dress that looked suspiciously bridal. When I gently asked her to tone it down, she laughed. "Relax," she said. "You're so sensitive. It's not like anyone's here for me." But her eyes said otherwise, and Daniel noticed. One night, while we were finalizing seating charts, he looked up and asked carefully, "Do you trust your sister?" I froze, because trust wasn't the word. "She's my sister," I said instead. He nodded slowly, like someone filing away a fact. The morning of the wedding arrived bright and cold. I woke up calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. In the bridal suite, makeup artists buzzed, stylists flitted, champagne glasses appeared. Marissa arrived late. She swept in like she owned the room, kissed my cheek, and said, "Wow, you actually look pretty. Not beautiful, not stunning, pretty." Then she handed me a glass of champagne. "For nerves," she said. "You need it." I hesitated. I don't usually drink before big moments. It makes me lightheaded. But everyone was watching. The photographer, the bridesmaids, my mother. So I smiled. And I drank. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. The music, the vows, Daniel's voice cracking when he said my name. I felt strange. Not drunk, not dizzy, just off. My limbs felt heavy. My thoughts slightly delayed, like I was walking through water. At the altar, I squeezed Daniel's hand, grounding myself. "You okay?" he whispered. "Just emotional," I whispered back. But when I looked out at the guests, my gaze snagged on Marissa. She was watching me, not with joy, with focus. At the reception, everything intensified. Lights brighter, sounds louder, my head pounding slightly behind my eyes. Marissa stayed close, always with a drink, always smiling. She kept refilling my glass. "Don't let it get warm," she said. I took a few sips, mostly out of politeness. That's when Daniel leaned in. "Stop drinking," he murmured. I blinked. "What?" "Trust me," he said quietly. "Just stop." I nodded and set the glass down. That decision may have saved my life. Half an hour later, I was sitting at the sweetheart table when my maid of honor leaned over. "Are you okay? You look pale."
"I think I need some air," I said. Daniel stood immediately, but before we could move, Marissa appeared. "There you are," she said loudly. "I was looking everywhere. You disappeared on your own wedding." I forced a smile. "I just need a minute." She frowned. "You barely drank," she said, glancing at my untouched glass. "You're not even celebrating." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's fine," he said evenly. "We're stepping outside." Marissa's smile slipped for just a second. Then she laughed. "Oh, relax. I was just joking." But as we walked away, I felt it, her eyes burning into my back. Outside, the cool air hit me like clarity. My head cleared slightly, and that's when Daniel said the words that changed everything. "I think your sister did something to your drink." I stared at him. "What?" "I watched her," he said. "She never drank from her own glass. She hovered over yours. She got annoyed when you stopped." "That's paranoid," I said weakly. Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he said, "Promise me something." "What?" "Whatever happens tonight," he said, "don't confront her yet." I swallowed. "Why?" He looked back through the glass doors, toward the laughter, the music, the stage. "Because," he said calmly, "if she did what I think she did, she's going to expose herself." I felt a chill run through me. Back inside, the DJ tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the toasts." Applause erupted. My heart started pounding. Marissa's head snapped toward the stage. Her eyes lit up. She turned to me, grin wide, and said, "Oh, good. This is my favorite part." I realized then, she had been waiting for this moment. She wanted the spotlight. She needed me compromised, and she had no idea that instead of stopping her, I was about to hand her the microphone. Before we continue, if you love stories where secrets, betrayal, and perfectly timed karma collide, make sure you subscribe to Scarlight Stories. Because what my sister said next, in front of 300 witnesses, was the biggest mistake of her life, and I let her make it. I woke up with a mouth that tasted like metal and a pounding behind my eyes that made the sunlight feel cruel. For one terrifying second, I didn't know where I was. Then I saw the pale curtains, the unfamiliar ceiling, the faint scent of eucalyptus and lemon cleaner, a hotel room, our wedding suite, my wedding suite. Memory rushed back in sharp, jagged pieces. The ballroom, the chandeliers, my sister's smile that didn't reach her eyes, the champagne glass suddenly feeling too heavy in my hand, the heat crawling up my neck, the way the floor tilted when it absolutely shouldn't have. I pushed myself upright and immediately regretted it. My stomach rolled and I pressed a hand to my forehead, breathing slowly until the room stopped spinning. Someone moved beside me. "Don't sit up too fast." His voice grounded me instantly. Evan. He was in the armchair near the window, still in his suit from last night, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion from fear, not lack of sleep. "You scared me," he said softly. I swallowed. What happened?" His jaw tightened. "You collapsed right after the first dance." My heart skipped. "Collapsed?" "You went pale, like all the blood drained out of you. You tried to say something, then your knees buckled." He leaned forward, elbows on his thighs. "If I hadn't been right there, you would have hit the floor." A cold shiver ran through me. I remember the toast, and then nothing, just noise. Evan nodded. "I know." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to replay the moments before the blackout. The clinking glasses, laughter, the weight of everyone's attention pressing down on me. And then my sister, Lena, standing just a little too close, offering to refill my glass when I'd barely taken a sip, her fingers brushing mine, her voice sweet, almost syrupy. "You're so tense. Relax. It's your big day." My stomach twisted. "Evan," I said quietly, "did anyone else drink from my glass?" "No," he said instantly. "I made sure of it." The silence that followed was thick. I opened my eyes and looked at him. "You think someone put something in it?" "I know someone did," he said. My breath caught. He stood and crossed the room, sitting on the edge of the bed so we were eye to eye. "The doctor ran a quick test at the hospital. They said it wasn't alcohol, it was a sedative, mild but enough to knock you out if mixed with champagne." My chest tightened until it hurt. "Sedative?" "Yes." I laughed weakly. That's insane." Evan didn't laugh. He continued, "They said it's often used to calm patients before procedures, or," his voice dropped, "to make someone compliant." My skin crawled. "Who would do that?" I asked, even though part of me already knew the answer. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. The silence screamed it. Lena.
My own sister. The girl who used to braid my hair before school. The girl who cried when I left for college, then slowly turned cold when my life started going places hers didn't. "I don't want to accuse anyone without proof," Evan said carefully, "but there are things that don't add up." "Like what?" My voice trembled despite my best effort. "Like the fact that she insisted on giving a toast even though she wasn't on the schedule, like how she kept hovering around you with that glass, like how she disappeared right after you collapsed." I pressed my lips together. "Where is she now?" I asked. Evan's mouth flattened. "She left the reception early, told everyone she wasn't feeling well." Of course she did, I thought. I stared at my hands, still faintly marked with henna from the ceremony. Hands that had signed contracts, negotiated million-dollar deals, built a life I was proud of. And yet, in that ballroom, I'd been reduced to something fragile, something she thought she could control. Tears burned my eyes, but not from sadness, from fury. "She tried to ruin it," I said quietly. Evan nodded. "She tried to ruin you." I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. Did anyone see her do anything?" "One person," he said. I looked up sharply. "Who?" "The bartender," Evan replied. "He said he leaned over the bar and asked him to turn his back for a second because she dropped her bracelet. He didn't think much of it at the time, but when I asked him this morning, he remembered seeing her near your glass." My pulse quickened. "That's not enough," I said. "People will say it's circumstantial, that I drank too much, that I was overwhelmed." "I know," Evan said. "That's why I didn't confront her, not yet." I studied his face. Calm, focused, controlled. "You have a plan," I said. A slow, dangerous smile touched his lips. "I do." I sat up straighter, ignoring the lingering dizziness. "Tell me." He hesitated. "I need to know something first. Are you sure you want to do this publicly?" I didn't answer right away. Images flooded my mind. Lena rolling her eyes when I announced the venue. Lena joking loudly about the cost of my dress. Lena whispering to relatives, making sure everyone knew how extra I was. She'd smiled through it all, but she'd never forgiven me. "Yes," I said finally. "I want everyone to see who she really is." Evan reached for my hand. "Then we let her think she got away with it." My heart thudded. "How?" "The brunch," he said. "The farewell brunch this afternoon." I blinked. "She's still coming?" "She texted an hour ago, said she feels better and doesn't want to miss it." Of course she doesn't, I thought. She wants to see the damage.
"What happens at the brunch?" I asked. Evan's eyes locked onto mine. "She's giving another toast." I frowned. "She is?" She asked if she could say a few words, apologize for overdoing it last night. My lips curled. "And we're letting her?" "Yes," he said softly, "because this time she won't be holding the microphone alone." A thrill ran through me, sharp and electric.
What do you mean? Evan stood and walked to the small desk near the window. He picked something up and held it out to me. My phone. "Check your recordings," he said. I frowned, unlocking the screen. Then I froze. There it was, a video file, time-stamped from last night, 10 minutes before the first dance. My hand flew to my mouth. "I forgot," I whispered. "I started recording because I wanted a candid moment with Mom before the toast." "And you forgot to stop it," Evan said. "Your phone caught everything." My heart pounded as I hit play. Lena's voice filled the room, low and smug. "Relax, you won't even remember this part." The sound of liquid pouring, a soft laugh, and then the words that made my blood run cold. "Don't worry, it'll be just enough to make you look sloppy. Everyone will see what you're really like." I pressed pause, shaking. "She confessed," I breathed. Evan nodded. "On your phone. On your wedding day." I looked up at him, tears finally spilling over. "They're all going to hear it," I said. "Yes," he replied. "When she raises her glass, when she thinks she's in control, when all 300 of them are watching." My fear melted into something else. Resolve. She wanted a stage. I was going to give her one. And this time, she wouldn't be the one holding the script. I woke up in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and lemon wipes, with a headache that pulsed behind my eyes like a warning siren. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then the memories rushed back all at once. The wedding lights, the music, the taste of champagne turning bitter in my mouth, my sister's smile. I tried to sit up and immediately felt a wave of nausea. "Easy," a calm voice said. I turned my head. My husband was sitting beside the bed, his jacket folded neatly over the chair, his tie loosened. He looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, jaw tight, hands clenched together like he was holding himself back from exploding. "You're awake," he said quietly. "What happened?" I asked, my voice dry. He exhaled slowly. "You collapsed. The doctor says you were drugged. Not enough to kill you, but enough to knock you out and make you sick." I stared at the ceiling. Drugged? At my own wedding? My chest tightened, not with fear, but with something sharper. Rage. "Did they find out what it was?" I asked. He nodded. "A sedative, fast-acting, colorless, tasteless." I closed my eyes. There was only one person who would have had access to my drink. One person who had been hovering, insisting I sip, insisting I relax, insisting I stop being so tense. My sister. "Where is she?" I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "She's saying it was an accident," he said carefully. "She says maybe someone mixed up glasses. She's crying. Your parents are defending her." Of course they were. My mother had always defended her, even when she broke my arm as a kid and said it was my fault for standing too close, even when she stole money from my purse and claimed I owed her, even when she slept with my college boyfriend and said I should have known better. "She tried to poison me," I said calmly. My husband's jaw flexed. "I know." I opened my eyes and turned to him. "I don't want the police. Not yet." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "I want witnesses," I continued. "I want the truth to be public. I want her to say it out loud." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're sure?" "Yes." Because I knew my sister. She didn't fear consequences, she feared humiliation, and I was going to give her exactly that.
The doctor cleared me to leave that evening. I walked out of the hospital in flats instead of heels, my wedding dress replaced with a borrowed sweater and leggings. The bandage on my arm felt like a scarlet letter. The venue had not shut down. That surprised me. When we arrived, the parking lot was still half full. Music drifted through the open doors. Laughter, glasses clinking. They were still celebrating. Without me. I felt something in my chest crack. Inside, guests turned when they saw me. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered my name. My mother rushed toward me. "Oh, thank God," she said, grabbing my arms. "You scared us." I looked at her hands, gripping me, the same hands that had brushed off my sister's behavior my entire life. "Did I?" I asked softly. Her smile faltered. "Sweetheart, accidents happen." I stepped back. "No, they don't." My sister stood near the head table, in a champagne-colored dress that was not white, but might as well have been. Her eyes widened when she saw me, then she smiled. A tight smile, nervous, controlled. "There you are," she said. "I was so worried." I walked toward her slowly. Every step felt heavy and electric at the same time. "Were you?" I asked. She laughed lightly. "Of course. I mean, what happened was awful, but thank God it wasn't serious, right?" I looked around. 300 people. Family, friends, colleagues, business partners, old neighbors, strangers who would remember this night forever. Good. I turned to the band. "Can I have the microphone?" I asked. The musician hesitated, then nodded and handed it to me. The room went silent. My husband moved to stand beside me. He didn't touch me, but his presence was solid, protective. I opened my eyes.
"I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice steady, "but I think it's important that everyone hears this." I looked at my sister. She froze. "Earlier tonight," I continued, "I collapsed after drinking champagne. I was taken to the hospital. The doctors confirmed that my drink was drugged." A collective gasp rippled through the room. My mother shook her head violently. "This is inappropriate," she hissed. I ignored her. "I want to be very clear," I said. "This was not an accident." My sister stepped forward. "You don't know that," she said quickly. "You're confused. You were sick." I turned to her and smiled. "No," I said, "I'm very clear." I raised my phone. "And I have proof." Her face drained of color. Earlier that day, my wedding planner had installed discreet security cameras near the bar to prevent theft. She had shown me the feed when I asked, worried about gifts. After I collapsed, my husband requested the footage. Every angle, every second. I pressed play. The screen behind me lit up. There she was, my sister, leaning over my glass while the bartender's back was turned, pouring something from a small vial into my drink, stirring it with her finger, smiling to herself. The room erupted, shouts, gasps, chairs scraping against the floor. My sister screamed, "Turn that off!" I faced the crowd. She did this at my wedding. My mother sobbed. My father looked like he might faint. Guests stared at my sister like she was a stranger. She backed away, shaking her head. "You don't understand," she cried. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I walked toward her. "What did you mean to do?" I asked. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I held the microphone closer. "Tell them," I said calmly. "You wanted my moment. You wanted attention. You wanted to feel powerful." Her lip trembled. "Say it," I whispered. She looked around. 300 eyes. Nowhere to hide. "I just wanted you to stop," she sobbed. "You're always perfect, always winning. I wanted one night." Silence fell like a guillotine. I straightened. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "That's all I needed." I handed it back to the band and took my husband's hand. As we walked away, the police sirens began outside, and for the first time that night, I felt something close to peace.
By the time the sun dipped low enough to turn the ballroom windows amber, the poison had already done its work. Not in my body.
In the room. Because suspicion has a way of spreading faster than champagne. I sat at the sweetheart table with my hands folded neatly in my lap, posture perfect, smile serene. Anyone watching would think I was the calmest bride in the world. They wouldn't know that under the table, my heel tapped once, twice, 3 times. Not from nerves, from anticipation. Across the room, my sister Lydia laughed too loudly, clinking glasses with a group of my father's colleagues. Her cheeks were flushed, not from alcohol, but from something far more intoxicating. Attention. She was wearing red. Of course she was. Not a soft wine red, not a subtle burgundy, a look-at-me red. The kind of dress you wear when you want eyes to linger and whispers to follow. Strapless, backless, slit just high enough to be deliberate. She caught me looking and lifted her glass in a mock toast, lips curling into a smile that said, "You survived. Too bad." She thought she'd won. She thought the worst was over. I turned slightly toward my husband, Daniel, and leaned in. "She's feeling confident," I murmured. Daniel didn't look away from the room. His jaw was tight, eyes alert. That's usually when people make mistakes. The band finished their set, applause rippled through the room, and the MC tapped the microphone. "And now," he announced, voice cheerful and unaware, "we'll begin the speeches. We'll start with the maid of honor, Lydia." A hush fell. I felt it, the shift, like the air being pulled tight before a storm breaks. Lydia stood slowly, smoothing her dress, milking the moment. She accepted the microphone like it was already hers, flashing that practiced smile she'd been perfecting since childhood, the one that said, "I'm charming, I'm harmless, trust me." She glanced at me, then at Daniel, then back at the room. "Wow," she laughed lightly. "What a wedding, right?" A polite clucker from the crowd. "I mean, $80,000 later, I guess it had better be." Another laugh, this one more scattered. I watched her carefully. The first rule of exposure is this: let them talk. Lydia continued, voice warming as she got comfortable. "For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lydia, the bride's younger sister. Though growing up, people always thought I was the older one." A pause, a smile, a few awkward laughs. She waved a hand dismissively. "I'm kidding, mostly." She took a sip of champagne. My champagne. "And I just want to say that today is really special, because not everyone gets a fairy tale ending." Daniel stiffened beside me. Lydia tilted her head, eyes flicking toward me again. "Some people have to work a little harder for it." My mother shifted in her seat. My father cleared his throat. I remained still. She was circling now. "I mean," Lydia went on, voice sweet as syrup, "who would have thought this would be the sister who ended up with the perfect wedding, the perfect husband, the perfect life?" She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Life is funny like that." The room wasn't laughing anymore. Good. She hadn't realized it yet, but she was already slipping. Lydia leaned against the podium, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I remember when we were kids, and she used to get sick all the time, always fragile, always needing attention." A murmur rippled through the guests. "She couldn't even keep food down sometimes," Lydia said lightly. "Poor thing." Daniel's hand curled into a fist. I placed my hand over his. She wasn't finished. "But today," Lydia smiled brightly, "she looks radiant, truly, and I'm so proud of her for pulling through." She raised her glass. "To resilience." Silence. No clinking, no applause. Just the sound of breath being held. Lydia blinked, clearly expecting more. Then I stood. Chairs scraped softly as a few heads turned. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't stop me. I stepped forward, smoothing my dress, heels steady against the marble floor. "Thank you, Lydia," I said gently. "That was thoughtful,
Her smile faltered for just a second. I actually wasn't planning to speak, I continued, taking the microphone from her hand, but since my health has become part of the evening, I think it's only fair I clarify a few things. The room leaned in. I felt it, 300 people suddenly listening. I did get sick earlier today. Very sick. A gasp. Lydia's face tightened. I collapsed in the bridal suite, lost vision, lost coordination, my blood pressure dropped dangerously low. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, my father stood halfway out of his chair, and if not for my husband insisting I be checked by the on-site medical team, I continued, voice steady, I might not be standing here right now. Whispers erupted. I turned slightly, gesturing to the side of the room. The doctor is here, as is the toxicology report. The word hit like a dropped glass. Toxicology. Lydia froze. I faced her fully now. I found a sedative in my system, a fast-acting one, colorless, tasteless, designed to be mixed into liquids. A woman in the front row gasped audibly.
Lydia's lips parted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The only drink I had today, I said, was the one my sister brought me. The silence was absolute. Lydia laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "This is insane," she said. "You're joking, right?" I tilted my head. "No." I turned to the MC. "Would you mind," I asked politely, "showing them the footage?" The large screen behind the stage flickered to life. Gasps erupted as the security footage played, grainy but clear. The bridal suite, me sitting on the couch, Lydia entering, setting down a flute, reaching into her clutch, a small vial, a subtle pour, then her smile, then her leaving. The video ended. The room exploded. My mother cried out. My father staggered back into his chair like he'd been struck. Daniel stepped forward, one arm around my waist. Lydia stared at the screen, then at me, her face drained of color. You set me up," she whispered. I looked at her with something close to pity. "No," I said, "you did this to yourself." Security was already moving. Guests were standing, whispering, some filming, others frozen in shock. Lydia backed away, shaking her head. "She's lying. She always lies. She's always been jealous of me." I met her gaze. "You dosed me on my wedding day," I said, in front of 300 witnesses. Her knees buckled. As security took her by the arms, she screamed, not in rage, but in terror. "You don't understand. I just wanted her to feel small, just once." The words echoed. Small. I closed my eyes briefly. Then I opened them. "This wedding," I said into the microphone, voice unwavering, "will continue." A beat. But Lydia will not be part of it. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in something deeper. Justice. As she was escorted out, Lydia twisted back toward me, eyes wild. "You think this is over?" she screamed. I met her stare. "No," I said softly. "I think it's just begun." And I was right, because what came next was the part she never saw coming. By the time my sister stood up with the microphone in her hand, the room already felt wrong. Not loud, not chaotic, too quiet. 300 guests sat at round tables, dressed in ivory linen, crystal glasses catching the light of the chandeliers. The band had stopped playing. Even the waitstaff had paused, hovering near the walls like they sensed something was about to break. My sister, Lila, smiled like she always did, wide, polished, confident. The kind of smile that made people trust her instantly. The kind that made people underestimate how cruel she could be. She tapped the microphone once. "Wow," she laughed. "Okay, I wasn't prepared for this many people staring at me." Light laughter rippled across the room. I watched her from my seat beside my husband, my fingers wrapped around his hand so tightly I barely felt my own pulse anymore. He leaned closer. "You okay?" I nodded. I had been waiting for this moment all night. Lila raised her glass. "For those of you who don't know me," she said, "I'm the bride's big sister." She emphasized the word big like it meant something more than age. "I've known her entire life, which means I've seen, well, all versions of her." Another laugh from the crowd. My mother smiled proudly from the head table. My father nodded along, completely oblivious. Lila turned slightly, just enough for her eyes to meet mine. And then she said it. "You know," she said lightly, "people think weddings are about perfection, but let's be honest, none of us here are perfect, especially not my sister." The laughter was louder this time. I felt it then, that subtle shift, the way some people leaned back in their chairs, the way my husband's jaw tightened. Lila went on. "She's always been a little sensitive, a little dramatic, always needing attention." I saw a few confused glances now. "And tonight," she said, swirling her drink, "she's really outdone herself." She tilted her head toward me. "Are you feeling okay, sis? You look a little pale." A few guests turned to look at me. I smiled, because that was her mistake. "I'm fine," I said clearly. The room stilled. Lila blinked just for a second, then she laughed it off. Good, I was worried the champagne might be a bit strong. My husband shifted in his chair. I squeezed his hand once.
Not yet. Lila lifted her glass higher. "So let's toast," she said, voice bright, confident, "to my little sister, who finally managed to pull off something truly impressive." She paused for effect, landing a man like him. Her eyes flicked to my husband. The laughter this time was hesitant. "And to love," she continued, "even when it's unexpected." She took a sip. Then she leaned closer to the microphone. "And since this is a celebration of honesty," she added, "I think it's only fair to say—" I stood. Chairs scraped softly as people noticed movement. Lila froze mid-sentence. I stepped forward, my heels steady against the marble floor. "Actually," I said calmly, "before you finish that toast, I think it's my turn." The silence was instant. Lila laughed nervously. "Oh, come on," she said. "It's just a joke." I took the microphone from her hand. She didn't resist, but her eyes darkened. 300 faces stared at me. My heart didn't race. It didn't pound. It felt steady. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This day means more to me than I can explain." I turned slightly, meeting my husband's eyes. He nodded. "But I also believe in transparency, especially on days like this." Lila crossed her arms. "You see," I said, "a few hours ago I collapsed in the bridal suite." Gasps rippled through the room. My mother stiffened. I was dizzy, disoriented. My heart rate was dangerously high. I let that sink in. And that's when my wedding planner noticed something unusual. I reached into my clutch, pulled out a folded document. "This," I said, holding it up, "is a toxicology report." A murmur swept across the tables. "It shows traces of a sedative mixed into my drink." The room erupted into whispers. Lila laughed sharply. "This is insane. Are you accusing someone?" I turned to her. "Yes." Silence. "I'm accusing you," I said evenly. My mother stood up. "Don't be ridiculous." "I wish I were," I replied. I looked back at the guests.
There's footage, I added, from the bar, from the hallway outside the bridal suite. My husband stood now, too. And witnesses, he said calmly. Staff who saw Leela near the drinks. Leela's face drained of color. This is a misunderstanding, she snapped. She's always been dramatic. I cut her off. No, I said. This time I was prepared. I pressed a button on the remote in my hand. The large screen behind the band lit up. The footage played. Clear. Undeniable. Leela at the bar. Leela pouring something into my glass. Leela looking around before sliding it toward the tray. The room exploded. My father shouted her name. My mother covered her mouth. Leela stumbled backward. You set me up, she said, voice cracking. I stepped closer. No, I said quietly. You did this to yourself. Security moved in. Leela screamed as they took her arms. You can't do this, she shouted. She's lying. She's always jealous. I watched her thrash, tears streaking her makeup. This was supposed to be my moment, she screamed. I leaned in close enough that only she could hear me. It was, I whispered. You just chose the wrong way to take it. They escorted her out. The doors closed. The room stood frozen. I turned back to the guests. I'm sorry, I said softly. I know this isn't what anyone expected tonight. I paused. But I'm alive, I continued, and I'm done protecting people who would rather hurt me than see me happy. No one spoke. Then, slowly, someone began to clap, then another, and another, until the room filled with applause. Not polite, not awkward, thunderous. My husband pulled me into his arms. You were incredible, he whispered. I breathed him in. The night didn't end there. Police arrived. Statements were taken. Leela was charged. My parents didn't speak to me. They didn't have to, because I finally understood something I should have learned years ago.
Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who would never poison you to feel powerful. Later that night, after the guests left and the music faded, I stood alone in the ballroom. The chandeliers dimmed. My dress felt heavy, but not with regret, with release. I looked at my reflection in the mirrored wall. Not broken, not weak, alive, unapologetic, free, and for the first time in my life, untouchable. If you want stories where truth wins, abuse is exposed, and quiet strength becomes unstoppable, subscribe to Scarlight Stories, because sometimes the most powerful revenge is surviving long enough to tell the truth.